Okay, let's talk for a second about that Rams-Eagles game, which was absolutely bonkers with the way it ended. And oh, by the way, as you continue to consume our content, which we hope you will continue to do a lot, make sure you tell your friends, hit that like and subscribe button because we're giving you nothing but the straight facts here. So that was the 17th straight game that the Eagles had won in which Jalen Hurts had started and then finished the game. The key word there being finished, because there's been a couple of games, especially last season, where Jalen was knocked out of the game and the backup had to come in, and then things fell apart. And it sure looked like everything was falling apart in this game against the Rams. At one point, the Rams were up 26-7. It was a disastrous start. You couldn't get anything going for the Philadelphia Eagles. Jalen wasn't hitting any big plays. Saquon Barkley continues to do very little this year. We'll get to that in a second. But what happened in the second half of that game? In the second half of the game, it was almost as if Jalen Hurts said, F it. Where is my guy, A.J. Brown? And that was the big turning point of the game offensively for the Eagles. He was held to essentially nothing in the first half. And then he finishes with 6 catches for 109 yards and a touchdown. And it felt like whenever there was a big play, 3rd and 11, 3rd and 10, what did Jalen Hurts do? Jalen Hurts went and found wherever A.J. Brown was, and that really kept that offense alive. But this game had a little bit of everything, okay? It started with a touchdown that probably shouldn't have happened for the Philadelphia Eagles because they scored on a tush-push sneak. And that play was clean. That play was fine. But on the play before the tush-push touchdown, there was another brotherly shove, tush-push play, whatever you want to call it, where once again, it was a blatant false start by the right guard of the Philadelphia Eagles. Now look, man, after everything that went on last week against the Chiefs, the NFL said, yeah, we messed that up, and we're going to do a much better job, much better job of scrutinizing the tush-push. And then on the first series, where there was a blatant false start, they missed it again. So, NFL, y'all need to tighten up a lot more than that, because that was so egregious. And that's been a huge controversy point this entire week. Should we revisit it? Should it be banned again? No, first of all, the play should not be banned, okay? The play should not be banned. People need to find a way to stop it. What the play should be done is officiated the right way. When it's a clear penalty, call the penalty. If they just called the penalty on all these times where the Eagles false started, none of the other teams would really have a problem with how successful they are because it wouldn't be as successful. So the root problem for other teams isn't banning the play, it's just officiated. And that leads to another big issue. The NFL officials are bad. They're just bad across the board. They don't like dealing with the tush-push because they can't see it as well. And that's one of the reasons you heard Dean Blandino say what he said on Fox last week. He's done with the tush-push. We're not done with the tush-push. It's not going anywhere. The NFL officials have just got to do a better job officiating it. So that's one thing. You saw a lot of resolve from the Philadelphia Eagles in this contest. Again, their 12th straight home win and their 17th straight win in which Jalen Hurts starts and finishes a game. But we always talk about this a lot. More games are lost than won in the NFL. And that game was significantly lost by the Rams. There were a couple of things that I could not figure out what the hell they were doing. There were a couple of situations where it was 3rd and 1 or 3rd and 2, and instead of running it on 3rd and 1, they threw it down the field and incomplete. And then on 4th and short, well, you have that stout interior defensive line of the Philadelphia Eagles. So when it's 4th and short, you know they're going to run it up against that big wall, and that big wall dominated, okay? And that happened on more than one occasion in the play calling for the Rams in that game. But it also led to two things that were just huge turning points in this game. When they were up 26-21, they had a chance for a field goal that would have put them up 29-21, making it an 8-point game. You got to get the touchdown and the 2-point conversion. And Jalen Carter, when he's not spitting, is very good. Got one of those big mitts up there and blocked it. Okay, so that changed the whole dynamic of the game. Because if you make that kick, you got to get a touchdown and a 2-point conversion just to tie it. So then after that missed kick, what happened? Eagles go right down the field. They get the touchdown to take the lead, and then they went for the 2-point conversion to make it a 3-point game, so a field goal would only tie. And what happened? They missed it. So if the Rams had made that kick, that field goal there in that situation by Josh Carty, then the whole tenor of the game changes, and the Rams might have won it on that missed two-point conversion. So the Eagles miss their two-point conversion. They give the ball back, and the Rams have a timeout to hold on to. And this is why you always hold on to a timeout. I see so many teams not figure out when to use that timeout, when to spike the ball. The timeout in those situations is the most valuable possession you have. You know the old saying, possession is 9/10 of the law? When you possess a timeout on a potential game-winning drive, it changes everything for you. And the Rams worked the clock effectively. The Rams worked it to perfection. The Rams did exactly what they needed to do. They got down there and got themselves in a chance for a reasonable attempt, right around 50 yards, for a game-winning field goal. And the Eagles did it again. And this time it wasn't Jalen Carter. It was the other monster defensive tackle from Georgia, Jordan Davis. Gets that paw up there. And one of the more athletic plays I've ever seen for a guy that size, Jordan Davis makes the block, recovers the ball, and runs it back for a touchdown as time expired. Huge celebration. Great job by the Eagles. But if you're the Rams, you got to be sick to your stomach about the way this game ended and the way they sort of gave it away with just missed opportunities on execution. You know, if they just find a way to execute on a couple of field goals, or even one of those two field goals, including the first one that wasn't returned for a touchdown, they probably walk out of Philadelphia with a win, and they're feeling good about themselves. Instead, they're doing that crazy thing that so many teams do when they lose a game. We should have won that game, is what they're saying to themselves. We cost ourselves that game. You did. But because you cost yourself the games, that didn't mean you should have won the game. You lost the game because you didn't execute when it mattered most. Crunch time in the fourth quarter. So the Eagles are great, right? They're 3-0. Everything's wonderful. It's all looking fantastic, except for this one tiny thing that I told you to look out for when the season started. Do you remember the season preview I did with Mark Schlereth? I said, I'm not so sure that Saquon Barkley is going to be a huge factor this year, the way he was last year. And let's just look at the numbers for Saquon Barkley in this game. Saquon Barkley, 18 rushing attempts for 46 yards. Wow, that's an anomaly. Is it? Is it? Because let's go back and look for the year. Saquon Barkley is averaging 2.6 yards per carry. Now, why is that problematic? It's only a 3-game sample. Because it's really not a 3-game sample. What it is an historical indication of what happens to 2,000-yard rushers the year after. Again, we talked about this in our season opener. If you hadn't liked and subscribed by the time this happened, this will be good information for you to think about going forward. Because I did a breakdown of every one of the previous 2,000-yard rushers in NFL history. All 8 of them, okay? And what I did was I looked at their 2,000-yard season, and then I compared the next season after. And we'll start with O.J. Simpson. In O.J. Simpson's record-setting season of 1973, when he ran for 2,003 yards in 14 games, he averaged 6 yards a carry. In 1974, the next year, 4.2. Big drop, 1.8 yards per carry. How about Eric Dickerson, who still holds the single-season rushing record? Well, in 1985, the year after his 2,000-yard season, he ran for 4.2 yards a carry. The year before, he ran for 5.6. Okay, that's a 1.5 yard per play. Then Barry Sanders, his 2,000-yard season, ran for 6.1 yards per carry. The next year, 4.3. Terrell Davis went from 5.1 yards to 3.1 yards per carry the season after his 2000 season, and it ended shortly because he tore his ACL. Chris Johnson went from 5.6 yards a carry to 4.3 yards per carry the year after his 2,000-yard season. Adrian Peterson went from 6.0 to 4.5, and Derrick Henry in 2021 only played 8 games and went from 5.5 to 4.3. What does that data tell us? It tells us that the big explosive plays that you were used to a year ago from Saquon Barkley are not going to be there this year for Philadelphia. And we've now seen 3 straight games where that has been the case. Again, he's averaging 2.6 yards per carry. So what do you have to do in that situation? You have to find explosive plays somewhere else. And that was the best thing that the Eagles did in this game. They decided, if it's not coming from the guy that we rode all the way to the Super Bowl championship a year ago, we've got to get one of our other big playmakers involved. That playmaker so far this season, and especially on the Sunday win over the Rams, has been A.J. Brown. Held in check through the first half of that game and then exploded in the second half and really was the catalyst offensively for the Eagles to squeak away with a win. So if you're the Eagles, you're feeling great about the fact that you are 3-0. And again, if Jalen Hurts starts and finishes a game, you're more than likely to win it. But problematic for them going forward. The Saquon Barkley thing isn't going to get better. This is what to expect. I mean, he's going to have a couple of games where he pops. There's no question about it. But you're not going to see those massive runs. Like, for example, in the 2 games last year that Saquon Barkley played against the Rams, he ran for 460 yards and had 4 touchdowns. Today, he didn't have 50. That's not an indication of how good the Rams defense is. That's a great indication of what the data tells you about what it's like for a running back the year after a 2,000-yard season. And oh, by the way, Saquon's the only 2,000-yard rusher to ever go and play in the Super Bowl, which means 3 extra postseason games to add to that wear and tear of a 2,000-yard season. Eagles win. They're 3-0. Great. Rams heartbreak. They're thinking they lost that game. They did. But the bigger issue for Philadelphia, Saquon Barkley's big explosive plays just are not going to be there this year. They've got to manufacture other ways to do it like they did in the second half against the Rams. And that is straight facts, homie. Like and subscribe.